cutting edge of anomaly research. You are about to experience The Evidence with your host, 3D pioneer and image analyst with Mars X3D, D.W. Gannett.
Hi, you've landed in the right place if you're interested in Mars or Mars anomalies, ancient civilizations, aliens, UFOs, that type of thing. But what we focus on here are cutting-edge Martian anomalies presented to you in stereographic X3D. Now, this is unlike any other channel on YouTube, and we're a small but growing little backwater here. We call ourselves Proud Weirdos because we meet regularly on the surface of Mars, and we have a look at the very latest anomalies from NASA and from other sources, and we examine them in X3D. My name is Dave. This is Mars X3D, and if you're new here, we're glad you're here. You know, one of the things you'll want to do right off is to learn X3D viewing. Now there's a link right down below, and it takes most people just a couple of minutes of practice to learn it. And it gets easier and easier every time you do it. It turns your entire monitor into what is essentially a giant Viewmaster. Very, very cool. It's a lot of fun. Anyway, that's one of the things we do here, and we call ourselves Proud Weirdos, because only a really strange person would learn this, much less be interested in what we're interested in. Now, I do offer what I hope is informed speculation on the things we discover. However, I much prefer that you examine the evidence, which is why we call it evidence, and make up your own mind. You're a grown-up. If you think it's garbage, move on to something else. If not, maybe you'll join the rest of us in the quest that we pursue, and the many people who send in their finds to me to go into the rigorous 3D processing process that we go through. Anyway, we have three types of categories we look at here. Oogies, which are objects of geological interest that could conceivably form by natural processes, but which display a great deal of weirdness regardless. Then we have artifact candidates, which are just that. They might be artifacts, they might not. There's just not enough clear evidence, or the resolution isn't clear enough to make a good call. But then we have the gold standard of this channel, which are artifacts. Items which display non-fractal geometry. Now, this is explained in other videos, so I won't bother to go into it here, except to say the non-fractal math is always an indicator of intelligent agency, regardless where you find it. So if you find it on Mars, you can be sure you're looking at something that's an artifact from an ancient civilization. So enough talk. Let's go ahead and jump in. And oh, by the way, stick around to the very end, because even if you're new to the channel and you're having a little bit of trouble with X3D, don't worry. I've got kind of a bonus for you waiting at the end, so stick around and check it out. Well, we'll start out with a few oogies pointed out by someone named Marcella. And these are kind of interesting. They're scattered all over this GMAC of 642 by my friend Neville Thompson. You'll want to check it out because there's a lot to see in there. We find so many what appear to be shaped blocks in the Persy images. And this one, you know, that cross cut in the center of it, and this round shape on the right, and its squared off end on the left, they don't seem natural to me. But this could happen geologically. So this will stay an oogie as we continue to look. Here's another really suspicious looking stone, especially because it has that little Smurf hooter coming off the top of it. What in the world is that all about? It's beautifully rounded, and again, it has that cross cut in it. Could it be natural? But again, pretty suspicious. Here's another one that seems to be maybe like a part of a wall that is broken down. Where do these cuts come from? And notice how on the left side it glints in the sunlight as if the stone itself were vitrified, turned to glass by heat. We find a lot of this on Mars. I guess my main question is, those two green arrows, the one on the lower right, points out what appears to be almost a perfect 90-degree angle. In fact, the whole block looks like a shaped block. You have those scalloped edges on top as well. But we're playing it safe, leaving this one as an oogie. My friend Raymond Glassford sent me this one the other day. This is a context view from Persy 629, and we'll start with the oogie in the circled area, and then we'll move on to artifact candidates, which will be his in the square. So here we go. I was intrigued by this one because of the holes. It looks like a giant dice, oogie dice. Now, natural probably, but you know those holes sure do seem symmetrical, don't they? The way they're arranged. I don't know. But let's move on into our artifact candidate territory with one Raymond found in this same image. As we zoom in, we can clearly see that this is a shaped block. Look at all the 90-degree angles, the recessed area, the rim that surrounds the top. Now we're going to zoom in even further, get a little better look at it, but bearing in mind we're going past the pixel breakup point, but here's where the non-fractal math speaks through the lack of resolution. Yes, this is the vaunted high-resolution 4K Z-cams on Persy, and you can see it's really blurry. But pay more attention to the math. Look at the right angles, the recessed top, the even rim, the hole in the center, and those parallel V marks on the front. All of this indicates intelligent agency. But without a crystal clear image to work with, this will have to remain in the artifact candidate category. And we're back with Marcella once again for this nicely shaped block from Persy 642. Now, you know, it really does look artificial to me, and I'm tempted to call it an artifact. But here again, despite the 90-degree angles and the symmetry that we see throughout, the lack of a really, really clear picture makes us leave this in the artifact candidate territory. My Hungarian colleague, Laszlo Shabalix, has really great sharp eyes. He finds all kinds of little tiny things that are really easy to miss. And so we're going to zero in into this field of rubble and see what he discovered. So there it is, just a couple inches square, and that's what they are, a couple squares. You know, that just doesn't seem natural at all to me, and I think this is a definite artifact candidate. It's just too clean and too square. And you know, as I was digging around in this same rubble field, I found something similar. I'm just a little ways off to the left in this image. And by the way, if you click the live link below or copy this easy-to-type short URL, you can go directly to this image and you can examine it for yourself. It's full of all kinds of really fascinating things. So let's get a little bit closer to the green target. Well, there it sits, completely non-fractal, or so it would seem. And this is an interesting little square piece of real estate there, so let me pull that yellow square out of there so you can have a look at it. I'll let you take a look around for a couple of moments, see what you can see, and then I'll point a couple things out. I was intrigued by these three little buttons or points or rivets in the corners, and was wondering if maybe those might be rebar, either broken off rebar or places where they attach. This does look like a broken cinder block, doesn't it? Did you notice this nice rectangular block? Yeah, it's a little bit worn, but the 90-degree angles are still there, nice and clean. Did you notice this nice little dog-legged piece, two 90-degree angles buried in the sand? Again, it looks like a broken cinder block. In fact, this whole area looks like broken cinder blocks. And, of course, this one on the left is a virtual twin to the one above and to the right. Again, these sure do look like blocks that have been busted up. Bob Friedman has a pretty good eye for artifacts and anomalies as well, and this is a pretty good-sized one you can see in the yellow target that he found in Persy 715. Now, Bob is calling this a wedge, and it does seem to have kind of a purposeful shape and interesting symmetry to it, but there's one thing that intrigues me, especially about this one. I'm interested by this hub right in the center of this thing. How does that happen? I think this has a very good chance of being an actual artifact, but again, not enough non-fractal angles and clarity to make a good call on it, but a nice find by Bob nonetheless. My friend Jim Hopton is back in the game, and I'm certainly glad of it personally. He has a really good eye for anomalies. In fact, he stopped by the house one time years ago and brought his laptop and showed me some spectacular finds that he'd made, and I sure wish you'd put those back up, Bob. I'd love to examine the 3D on those. Anyway, here's one from way back in Curiosity 524. This very interesting stone circle is maybe 4, possibly 5 feet across, and looks like the foundations for a silo or a grain storage or a small shelter, something of that nature. But you can see that something like this wouldn't just form by itself on the surface, that these are the remains of something that were purposely put together. Here's one pointed out by Mars X3D member San Kotvik, and you can see it down there on the left. It's actually fairly good sized. And by the way, if you haven't been by our Facebook site, we have daily postings and a whole lot going on there that doesn't make it into the episode, so you'll want to check that out if you're interested in this crazy stuff. I like this. I mean, that looks like a tool. It looks like a spear, actually. A spear point bound to a shaft that's broken. But it's so large that I'm inclined to think it's a tool if this isn't otherwise a natural formation. But really a nice find by San Kotvik. Okay, let's move into the artifacts with this nice find by Jim Hopton, 1274 NavCam. And I was unable to get metrics on it, so I'm just going to hazard a guess that the area inside the yellow box is probably 60 feet or so away from the camera. You can clearly see a square structure inside the square, and let me pull that out of there so you can let your eye roam about this scene for a few moments. As you look around within the image, Take note of the rectilinear patterns surrounding this square structure. All around it, it appears to be foundations or walls that are badly worn down and collapsed. As we zoom in and get really blurry on these low-resolution nav cams, you can see that the non-fractal angles hold up to inspection, and in front there it appears to be a hollowed-out structure as well. So here's the problem. This structure, if that's what it is maybe no more than 6 to 10 feet across. You'd be tempted to call it, a large building because that's what it looks like, but it's really not that large. But it definitely is non-fractal. So as we put on our archaeologist's hat, we just have to say this is an artifact. Let's wrap things up today with a couple of very nice finds by Laszlo Shabalix. He's calling this one a book. So let's have a look. See what I mean? It does kind of look like a book, but really it's a very nicely shaped block with sharp, clear 90-degree angles, and then that mortised end on the left. Beautiful. So I'm going to pull the box out of the way and let you look around before I start putting a few more things out. Okay, color me impatient. Check out that block with the arrow there, the clean lines on that. And did you notice this block on the upper left? It appears to be shaped, and maybe, possibly, that's carving on it. Did you catch this wavy little piece there up on the left? And don't these seem like really symmetrical little beads all around this particular block? And down in the right-hand corner, a nicely shaped triangular block that may possibly have carving on it. Look at those fluted edges. And one final close-up look at Laszlo's book. And finally, we have this nicely shaped block about, 3 to 4 feet long, sitting out there in the plain. That left end is pinched together symmetrical. The whole thing is symmetrical. And it has that beautifully rounded 90s on the right-hand side, and even a hint of some structure within it. Let's take a closer look. Look on the right side in the shadowed portion. Do you see the structure in there? How it appears to be round, perhaps with radial parts, radial spokes to it. This is a manufactured artifact, something from an ancient civilization. And as promised, for those of you who may be having a little bit of problem with learning X3D, or maybe you just don't want to even learn it, here's a bonus section where we give you all the anomalies we covered in this video in what's called Wiggle 3D format. It's not nearly as good as X3D, but for many people, it's plenty good enough. If you saw something you liked today, it would mean the world to me if you left a thumbs up on your way out, and maybe even a comment. If you haven't visited our Facebook site, Mars X3D, The Evidence, there's a live link below. Also an email where you can send me your anomalies if you'd like me to take a look at them. I'd also like you to consider the possibility of supporting this work. You see that little join button underneath the video? Just click it. You're not committing to anything by clicking it, and it tells you what the different levels are, and for less than $0.10 a day, you can become a proud weirdo. First class. It's nothing to sneeze at, and it does really help us out. So, for all of you proud weirdos out there, you know who you are. Stay safe. And stay weird. This is your buddy Dave, over at Mars X3D. Be well.